Hello and welcome to On the Other Hoof. A pretty decent weekend of racing coming up. 3 meetings for us to cover live this evening, coming courtesy of Ffos where you have the West Wales National and also the Welsh Champion Hurdle, along with one visit to Weatherby for the Towton Novices Chase. Black Lion looking to boost his RSA claims at the Cheltenham Festival tomorrow afternoon. The main meeting in England, anyway, comes courtesy of Sandown. Their feature races at 2:25. That's the Scilly Isles Novices Chase. A good match up there with T for 2 and also Bristol Demai. But the main meeting of the day undoubtedly is over in Ireland. 4 Grade 1s to cover, the likes of Ivanovic Gorbatov in a juvenile hurdle to start things off, as well as Road to Riches, the third in the Cheltenham Gold Cup last year, returns to the race course for the first time in 2016 to put the final touches on his Cheltenham Gold Cup preparation once again. We'll be covering a few of the races over in Ireland, plenty of the races in England as well. Every single Channel 4 race will be covered. Alongside me this evening is Adam Webb and Timeform's Callum Adele. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Evening.
And Callum, happy birthday for yesterday.
Yep, happy birthday.
Yeah. How was it? What did you do?
I went to Chelmsford last night with fam, which is good fun. Actually, had a nice meal in the restaurant, which I would recommend. And yeah,
It's a shame the restaurant was at Chelmsford, really.
Honestly, it was good. It was good.
I'll take your word.
I was pleasantly surprised.
I thought you'd been there before.
I have, but restaurant-wise, it was really good. It was a really, really nice restaurant. Would recommend it.
Fair enough. A quick reflection on last week. We had Cheltenham Trials Day, of course, and more Cheltenham Trials coming up this weekend, courtesy of Leopardstown tomorrow, and also the official Cheltenham Trials Day at Musselburgh on Sunday. Fairly few open races at Musselburgh this weekend. But last week, guys, it was an awesome weekend of racing, has to be said. But Thistlecrack and Yanworth, the two highlights from Cheltenham. Adam, if you wouldn't touch on Thistlecrack to start with.
Jesus, he is a monster. And I don't like to get carried away with horses, but I was saying off there, when he won at Newbury, I remember the interview Colin Tizard did with Lydia Hissock, and he said he wasn't fit, and I thought, what? He surely got to have been somewhere near ready to win here. And then at Ascot and at Cheltenham, he hasn't come off the bridle. You can question the form in behind, Pity Zig, the Romford Pele, etc., etc., but it's the way he's done it. He's not even come out of first gear to win. He wins the World Hurdle, and anything odds against, I think, is a ridiculous price, especially when you can see that Annie Power and Vroom Vroom Mag, the next two in the market, I've got doubts about. Annie Power won't go for the race. Vroom Vroom Mag, I think, needs to improve a hell of a lot to even get near Thistlecrack, so I think he should be odds on. And it's fair for me to say that. There are plenty, you've got several odds on shots, obviously, at the festival, but I think he should be one of those. And maybe the next one you're going to mention should, maybe with Yanworth, but he was pretty awesome as well.
Maybe Yanworth. Callum, I'll let you touch on Yanworth. We're standing together watching the race, and I was saying to you turning for home that Shantou Village was staying on. If you can get Yanworth off the bridle, then Alan King's representative would be in trouble. Yanworth did not come off the bridle in the end and was awesome in there.
Did you say that? I don't remember you saying that.
I did say that. I don't know if I said it out loud.
No.
I was definitely thinking it anyway.
Don't remember you saying that. I was.
I might have said it to Hattie then.
Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah, I was with you when watching it, so you might have said it. Yeah, I haven't been more impressed by Novice than him all season, personally. Novice Hurdle, that is. He looks exceptional, absolutely exceptional. Him and Mint just look certainties for their respective races at the moment. But in particular, Yanworth, I just thought was absolutely superb the other day. Good ground, should maybe even see him in better light. Nothing's been able to get him off the bridle, so I don't see what will at Cheltenham either.
That's Yanworth for the Neptune then. And Thistlecrack, who is now a short price favourite, or an even shorter price favourite for the World Hurdle in just about 6 weeks' time at the Cheltenham Festival. Good racing tomorrow, though. A few more final touches being added on to Cheltenham preparations. Road to Riches, as mentioned, we get to that a little bit later on in the Irish Gold Cup. And also Ivanovic Gorbatov over in Ireland to the Juvenile Hurdle, taking on Let's Dance and also Jers Girl. But as always, here on The Other Hoof, you can get in touch with us at On The Other Hoof is our Twitter tag. If you're watching this on repeat on YouTube as well, please do comment in the comment section below. We'll try and get back to your questions at the next week video, or we may even reply to it if we do see it in time. But at On The Other Hoof is our Twitter tag. Any question about this weekend's racing, any Cheltenham Festival fancy, and also the Grand National entries were revealed this week. Any early fancies for the Grand National, do get in touch. One more thing that we did want to mention as well. Now, for the Cheltenham Festival, we do have a set number of previews coming up. We have a few guests on those as well. We have Josh Moore joining us for the Novice Chasers. We have Nick Schofield, as we have had for the last couple of years, previewing the 4 championship races. Tom Stanley will also be on, I think, to cover the Novice Hurdles. That's yet to be established. But if there's anyone that you particularly want to see on with us for a Cheltenham Festival preview, do let us know. Tweet in to @OnTheOtherHoof, and we'll see what we can do about that. Realistic ones only, please. But do tweet in this evening, as the first race we're going to be covering is the 150 at Sandown Park. The Betfred treble odds on Lucky 15s. Handicap chase of 1 mile, 7 furlongs and 119 yards. Only the 6 going to post here, Adam. It's a fairly good 6 though, and Bold Henry, a course and distance winner just 35 days ago.
Yeah, he was impressive on that occasion. He'd shaped well the previous time at Cheltenham, and he was impressive last time under Barry Geraghty. He's gone up in the weights, rightly so for it. He went up £10 for that, and he meets Arthur's Oak again. I think he can confirm form with him with the likely rain due. I think he's better on a softer surface. And it has dried out throughout the week, but with the amount of rain due, I think he will take all the beating tomorrow. Of the rest, you've got Mr. Mole in there, who's just an enigmatic character, and Sam Twiston-Davies is in for an interesting ride off him. Of the rest, I think Crispy Green, I know you're giving mention, Luke, I do think he'll be interesting, not tomorrow, but when we get towards Cheltenham Aintree. I think there is a decent prize in him later in the season, on decent ground as well. Oak Dillon's got the blinkers back on, but I'm iffy on his chances. And Grey Gold was really disappointing over course and distance last time, so needs to improve severely on that effort. I think Bold Henry should be taking all the beating here.
For what it's worth, I would agree with Bold Henry. I think both himself and Arthur's Oak fought out a finish here last time out. So I think those two could be fighting out the finish once again. Bold Henry was really impressive on that. They probably won a little bit easier than he made it look. Richard Johnson on board this time. Barry Geraghty, obviously, his services needed back over in Ireland. But I think 5-2 about the pair of them is ultimately pretty fair on that. Those two were a long way clear of the rest. Also in that race was Grey Gold. Crispy Green is a horse that I've liked for a long, long time. He picked up a bit of an injury though after a fall at Fontwell. Off my top of my head, I cannot remember what that injury was. It wasn't anything serious, but it did keep him out of training just for a little while. He's been off for 127 days. He was still going well in the Grand Annual at Cheltenham Festival last year when coming down at the top of the hill. I'm still adamant that he would have played a fairly major role in that race, but we'll never know on that regard. That, I imagine, will be his main aim for the rest of the season. It could just be that Crispy Green may well need the run for tomorrow. So for once, tomorrow I'm going to be sitting on my hands trying not to back Crispy Green at about 6-1. But I think if he is fit enough to do himself justice, then he will go very well, and he'd probably be the one to beat in my eyes in this field. But hopefully, or taking that he will need the run with Cheltenham just on the horizon, then I imagine that Bold Henry would take a lot of beating, and Arthur's Oak would be the one to follow him home. Callum, I think the market's got this pretty spot on. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think the two that fought out the finish here over course and distance last time by far the most interesting. They pulled well clear. It was pretty unraceable ground, but they both look pretty well handicapped sorts. Still, even though Bold Henry's gone up 10, Arthur's Oak up 5. I think I'd probably prefer Arthur's Oak tomorrow slightly, only because Bold Henry's just a horse that I don't know. Can he string a couple of performances together of real class? He's a horse that isn't without his quirks for me. He's a hold-up performer. Arthur's Oak's going to go out in front, and I think he'll take some pegging back. So he's on £5 better terms. I've got no doubt Bold Henry had a little bit in hand last time, but I'm not fully convinced Bold Henry will be in the same form tomorrow, whereas I'm pretty certain Arthur's Oak will run a big race once again. So I think he's the more solid option at 11-4 rather than Bold Henry at 5-2. The others I think have got plenty of question marks. Mr. Mole looks really out of form. Crispy Green, I think, will come good later on in the season. Grey Gold handicap to the hill, Noctiland's very quirky, so I'd be surprised if. I do think Arthur's Oak is the most solid option.
Yeah, Arthur Doak and Bald Henry then. Seemingly the selections on the panel, the market does seem to have that race fairly spot on as far as that's concerned, though. The 205 at Ffos last is our first visit to Wales for the dry build limited Welsh champion hurdle, a limited handicap over 2.5 miles. 12 going to post here, Adam. Silsol won this last year. He's back to defend his crown with Jack Sherwood taking £5 off, but again, the market hasn't missed him.
No, it's not. I mean, he's been over fences for his last couple of starts, and his jumping has got progressively worse than at Warwick last time out. I think it's the right decision that they're coming back over hurdles, and Jack Sherwood got on really well with him last season. He won on him twice. He won on him at Newbury and in this race 12 months ago off a £3 lower mark. I think the race is actually, it pays to concentrate, I think, on those near the head of the weights, because the last 2 years, Paul Nicholls has won it with the top weight. He won it with Safid who beat Whisper, and he won it with Silsol last year. I think it's between him and Deputy Dan personally. Deputy Dan, the drop-in trip's really going to help him because he travelled so well against Thistlecrack in the race at Newbury before Thistlecrack eventually beat him. I don't think Deputy Dan is an out-and-out stayer over 3 miles. I think 2.5 on really testing ground is his bag. This is the type of race I can see him going really well in, and I can't split them. If I had to, I can't split them personally, but if I had to tentatively go for one, it would be Silsol. But what I'm going to suggest is a reverse forecast with them, because I don't see them at the first two. Of the rest, Racing Pulse is an interesting one. I'm surprised they're back over hurdles with him. I thought they could have stuck with chasing. He won well last time out, and he could have even had an entry in the West Wales National, because I know Rebecca Curtis has basically put a whole list of Spain chasers in the race, but you could have easily given him an entry on that Chepstow win. One for Harry proved me wrong last time out, and won nicely, but I just think the rise in the weights against the likes of Silsol and Deputy Dan, I think, is a bit too much for him. Of the rest, Roadie Joe interests me, but not tomorrow. I really don't think he'll handle the ground, because all of his runs have come on decent ground, and I know Evan Williams was saying earlier that he will go on soft ground, but there's a difference between going on soft ground and going on Ffos last soft ground, heavy ground even, so yeah, it's an interesting race. I think it's between the top two, and I'm going to put up a reverse forecast.
The one where I've got with Deputy Dan for tomorrow, yes, he's been running a much better race than this and running very accreditably out of handicap company, is that he doesn't do a lot of work off the bridle. When he's travelling strongly, he's a bit of a sight to behold, but he doesn't really find a great deal when push comes to shove. And we saw over fences, once he makes a mistake, then that was really it. He was going backwards, and he was always fighting an uphill battle. I don't think he's a horse that's got a great deal of heart, for all that he's got all the ability in the world. Tomorrow, if he manages to win off a mark of 151 in conditions like that on the bridle, then fair play to him. But I couldn't imagine Deputy Dan slogging through the mud, especially getting into a battle on this sort of ground with anything and getting his head in front. I hope I'm wrong in that regard. He's a horse with a lot of ability, but I couldn't be having him for tomorrow. I think the one to be with could well be San Benedito, who, again, is a tricky horse in his own right. I don't think his mark's unduly harsh off 145, especially with Harry Cobden taking a further £7 off. The last time we saw him was over the Christmas period on Challow Hurdle Day at Newbury, behind One Track Mind on that occasion. One Track Mind is a very interesting horse to go forward with, maybe even beyond handicaps for the Warren Great Tricks team. He outstayed him on that occasion, and there's no real shame being outstayed by One Track Mind. He may have also had a little bit too much pace for San Benedito. He did travel well, but it's worth keeping in mind also that the Paul Nicholls yard, it was really around the peak of their poor form. I know they had a few seconds on that day, but I think San Benedito is still a fair deal better than a mark of 145 suggests, especially with young Harry Cobden taking a further £7 off. It is not a race that I'd be willing to have too much of a bet in. I might back San Benedito each way at about 8-9 to 1. But I think if you were going to have a bet in the race, it would be with the Paul Nicholls, what looks to be second string in the market. Not so much on jockey bookings. That's hard to work out on that occasion. But I think San Benedito could well be the one to beat in the field. Callum, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I wouldn't read anything to jockey bookies, obviously, because Shearer's got a good record, and Sol and Cobden's ridden San Benedito before, so wouldn't read anything into that. When I looked at this race, I actually thought it's not the market's not really been treated like it's actually a handicap, and that the two classy horses, the two horses that are giving plenty of weight away, are at the head of the betting. And Silsol, if this was a normal handicap, there's no way I'd be touching Silsol off 154. Deputy Dan, I do think the drop-in trip, like Adam said, we'll definitely see, because it looks like 3 miles has always really stretched him, and that might emphasise the fact that he doesn't find that much of the bridle, maybe because he's just got nothing left. So I think he'll run well tomorrow. He might be vulnerable for win purposes of 151. And I do like San Benedito. His 2 best runs this season have stepped up to 2.5 miles when he won at Wincanton in good style, and then won a good second to One Track Miners. Horses pretty highly rated. Last time at Newbury they finished a mile clear, and that was bottomless ground as well, so I think he'll have no issues with the ground tomorrow. He is a tricky horse. They've got the hood and the tongue tie on, or they have had since pretty much May, so he clearly isn't, he is a bit tricky, but I think he's probably better handicap than quite a few of these, and he's only a 5-year-old, so I'd definitely be tempted by him around that sort of price. Cave Moss, I think that's a short price considering it's basically just on the basis that it's got course form, but it looks in no sort of form recently. Over fences, which it probably didn't take to, but then last time back over hurdles. It should be expected more, and it's got Tom O'Brien on instead tomorrow instead of Reece Flint, but I couldn't really be touching him in the form he's in. And I just think those two at the head of the betting are pretty poorly handicapped, if you're going to treat it properly as a handicap, which it is. So I'm going to go for the improving San Benedito instead.
Yeah, San Benedito for myself and Callum. It's Deputy Dan and Silsol for Adam. You can't split the two in a reverse forecast. Off to Sandown for the second time in the afternoon, though. The 2:25 is their feature race of the day. The Grade 1 Betfred TV City Isles Novices Chase over 2 miles at 4 furlongs and an extra 10 yards. 6 going to post, it will more than likely be 5 going to post, because bit of a puzzle. This is her second preference. We're talking about her a little bit later on in the card in our next race, actually coming up at Weatherby, but it's a fairly tricky race, this, Adam. You've got the first 2 in the market with Bristol Demai and T4 2. T4 obviously won the Grade 1 Feltham Novices Chase, the Corte Star Novices Chase, whatever you want to call it, over the Christmas period. 2.5 miles should suit T4 2, but Bristol Demai was devastatingly impressive last time at Haydock.
He was. Just before I begin, brilliant pricing on a bit of a puzzle when this Rule 4 happens and it takes out part of the money. It's just, I don't like the idea of 2 entries on a day when... Anyway, Weatherby is going to be really testing tomorrow anyway, but it's not going to be abandoned, so I just don't like that. Anyway, T4 has been impressive on both his chasing starts, and the drop back to 2.5 for me is a real positive. At Kempton, I was surprised at how much he found late on, considering how keen he was in the early stages. It is a slight concern at Sandown. I know he's jumped well, and he is a free-going sort, but some of these fences around here, he doesn't want to be as free or as keen as he is, especially going away from the sands. That downhill fence, it does take some jumping, and some very good horses have made some bad mistakes there. I was watching back, interestingly enough, I was watching this race back from a couple of years ago with Punchestowns, and he was a really sound jumper on the whole, but he met that fence wrong and made a Horlicks of it. And it made me think about that with T4 with how keen he can be. He's a very good jumper, but it's just for how keen he is. Bristol Demai, he was very impressive last time out at Haydock. The worry with me here is, it's only 2 weeks since that, and I know he won easily, but because he won so easily, it could have easily taken more out of him than what it appeared on the eye. He was a fresh horse afterwards, but really heavy ground at Haydock takes a lot out of horses. The Selection is a horse I put up as a horse to follow, and I'm glad they're persisting with him over fences. He's Maximiser, who arguably should have won on chasing debut at Carlisle behind Silsol, but I understand the reasoning was that Joe Colliver wasn't exactly sure how much he'd find off the bridle, because he'd done everything easily in his novice hurdles. So when he rode him at Carlisle, he wasn't aware of how much he'd actually find, but for him, he said post-race that he found plenty off the bridle, and he's very exciting going forward, and would need the run. So he went to Newbury, he was well backed, and unfortunately, for a horse that jumped so well, he took a perler down the far side, and he's had a setback since, I think probably caused by the Newbury fall, but I think it's significant that Richard Johnson takes the ride, and at the prices, I think he's a huge price. Obviously, you've got to wait for a bit of a puzzle to come out, but even then, I still think he should be at least half his price. The other 2, as the May needs to recover from the fall, the drop back in trip in the range should help him, but I don't think he's of this quality. And Eubank, I think, is more of a handicapping proposition, and didn't jump well at Huntington. I know he came to win the race, he's done well to win, but his jumping is a question mark for me. We're in for a treat, because the top 3 in the market all jump really well, but I think Maximiser is the one for me around here. And interestingly as well, he's 50s for the RSA, It's his only novice chase entry, so if he wins tomorrow, he'll be shortened for that. And I'd advise a couple of quid each way, maybe at 50s. It's worth 50 to 1 pokes at the festival.
Well, I think what's said about Maximizer, if he finishes within 10 lengths of, or whoever wins it, I think it might be 15 lengths, then he'll definitely be going to the RSA afterwards, because that would brand him good enough for that. It does look a fantastic renewal of the Ciliars, won last year by Chitandi Burley, who probably wasn't top class, and probably isn't, well, it definitely isn't top class, but this does look a very good renewal indeed. T for 2, I think, would be the most likely winner, but is priced accordingly for that, with Lizzie Kelly back on board. I've got severe worries about Bristol Demai. Adam, you flagged up one of the main points being 2 weeks just after his last Haydock win, but he's only been beaten once over fences. That did come here. You can't really use that against him because he was behind Armad on that occasion. Armad is a very good horse indeed. I think Callum has the same worries about Bristol Demai as well, in that he's got his limitations. They were shown over hurdles. They've been shown once over fences. Again, very harsh to use that term, over fences, for him. But his last 2 races haven't been the strongest of events. Last time out, he beat Amore Alato. He was matched a long way from home, and he did get into a bit of a jumping battle with Amore Alato. But he will need to do a great deal more tomorrow. And I think being priced that closely to T for 2, I think there are much better talents and abilities than the prices are suggesting. I have utmost respect for Maximizer, as Adam rightly said. He jumps very, very well. It was a shock last time when he came down at Newbury. I think the jockey booking of Richard Johnson is a very clever one as well. No offence to Joe Colliver. He's just still more of an inexperienced rider, and having Richard Johnson on any horse wouldn't be a negative in that regard. I'm not giving up on Eubank. I probably won't back him tomorrow. I think 25 to 1 might just drag me in if he is still around that price. But he has had his jumping problems at Huntingdon. The one point I did want to raise, that I think it was 3 or 4 out at Huntingdon. He didn't make a mistake. He just lost quite a bit of momentum before the fence, and he came out about 6 lengths worse off with everything else. He still managed to quicken up in probably not the strongest of handicaps and latched onto the back of the field. He was in, I say he was in command at the last anyway, when unseating Josh Moore. He didn't really get very high, and that was by far his worst mistake of the contest. If he can get into a rhythm around Sandown, then he wouldn't be too far away. And it's also worth noting that this will be the best ground that Eubanks run on over fences. He's contested, I think, soft and heavy ground on his only 2 starts over the bigger obstacles. At the moment, it's good to soft, good in places. I do think he's a horse that very much needs better ground. At 25 to 1, if something doesn't fire, i.e. Bristol Demai, then I do think Eubank could definitely be the horse to pick up the pieces. But for win purposes, I'm very, very sweet on T for 2, and I'd be surprised if T for 2 was getting beaten tomorrow afternoon. Callum, for yourself?
Yeah, you've pretty much summed it up for me. T for 2, I mean, his 2 best performances over hurdles and over fences now come at Kempton, but it's got good enough form at other tracks, at different tracks, to suggest that it will handle something like Sandown. Maybe it's better going right-handed overall, I don't know, but we'll see tomorrow. The drop back in trip, we know, as you were talking, considering I was so surprised how well he won that race, considering how keen he was early on. I think Bristol Demai definitely has his limitations. I mean, looking at the form, the only time he got beat by Gala Victoire and Armad, and that actually isn't that bad a form. I mean, both of them have done pretty well over fences since, Armad in particular, but I don't know, I just think, you know, is T for 2 in that similar mould? I think he is, and I think he's definitely holds the aces tomorrow. But Maximizer with Dickie Johnson on tomorrow, I think, is very interesting as well. It was a weird fall at Newbury. I mean, he got over it, and he just seemed to crumple on landing a little bit. And I don't think there's any issues with jumping at all. In fact, it should be his asset. So I think him and Eubank are definitely of interest. I mean, Gary Moore couldn't stop having winners at Sandown early in the year, so you never know with Eubank, Luke. I mean, I'm sure you'd be raging if that won and you didn't have anything on it. Imagine at 25s. Yeah, I think Maximizer will run well tomorrow. I will actually put him up with T for 2 maybe as a forecast or something like that, because I would actually have a bet on Maximizer if it was 8 runners, but I don't know, it's quite tough with only 2 places instead of 3. So look, I think T for 3. T for 3. I keep calling T for 3. T for 2.
T for 3 would have been some sight round Sandown though.
I think T for 2 should win, but Maximizer is definitely of interest. I probably won't have a bet overall, but it's a good race. It's actually a better race than what it usually is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
For what it's worth, I will be backing you back tomorrow. I was trying to play it off cool, but I'll be sitting there on the sofa tomorrow thinking 5 minutes before the race. Well, go on. I am led to believe though that you back after this will be going to the JLT, win, lose or draw. So
Alright. So my assumption of handicapping is wrong then.
that's what I thought. That's what I thought, but apparently that is not the case with you back. He is JLT bound to take on the likes of Kilortovic. Enough of the silly hours though. We're off to Weatherby for the only time in the afternoon for the 2:45. That is the Topol Towton Novices Chase, a Grade 2 over 3 miles and 45 yards. The 6 runners going to post. Bit of a puzzle does turn up here as long as the meeting goes ahead. There really shouldn't be any reason why the meeting wouldn't go ahead either. But Adam, this one is a novice chase like we had down at Sandown for the silly hours, but very much a different sort of feel about this. A lot of horses are very much undecided on where they're going to go at the Cheltenham Festival. Black Lion, one of those. Native River, probably one of the main ones that we have no idea where he's going to turn up. It could be the RSA, it could be the 4 miler. I imagine tomorrow will be a big stepping stone and provide a lot towards where his Cheltenham target will be.
Yeah. What I will say again, like the silly hours, I think this is a really good race. The only horse we're missing is See You at Midnight, who, ironically, earlier in the week, I was doing my stable stars, and I looked at through the weekend, and I thought, oh, See You at Midnight's definitely running. I think he'll win the Towton. So put him in, and then on Thursday, found out he wasn't going to run. So I've got a horse in my stable stars who's not running this weekend. Oh, well. Black Lion's your favourite. I think he's short. He's just... I love the horse personally. I think he's one of the toughest horses you'll find in training, but my concern with him is that he's just not the most natural of chasers. Admittedly, he jumps well, but I just think the more he goes up in grade, the more he goes up in class, I just think he'll struggle. And the race for him at the festival, I think it's a 4 miler for him, because they'll go a nice steady pace for him. The RSA, I think, would be too much for him. He's just a hand too small, and it's a shame, really, because I love his attitude, and I think he's a really decent horse, but he's too short tomorrow. I think it's between Native River and Definitely Red, and of the pair, I'm going to side with Definitely Red, who I thought ran really well behind Black Hercules at Warwick. And, like, as you said earlier, all of these horses are still undecided where they're going to go. I think a bit of a puzzle will go for the RSA unless she disappoints here. But Definitely Red, I think it'd be worth a go in the RSA chase, and Native River likewise, but I just think the track would suit Definitely Red more. I think Native River would want more of a stamina test of a track, more like Cheltenham. Because Weatherby, even though it's flat and it is galloping, I still think he wants more of a test than that. So I think at the price, I think Definitely Red's the one to be with.
Yeah, I was keen on Definitely Red last time, but no, I'm not sure. I think this is a really good race. I think Native River, I know Callum might feel the same way about this. He put Native River up as a horse to follow and is a Grade 2 winner this season. For that, has to carry the penalty along with Black Lion. But I think Native River, last time out, we were all of the same mindset that Kempton won't suit him at all. It's much more of a speedy 3 miles, whereas Weatherby, it's going to be emphasis much more on stamina, especially in this ground, and that could really play into the hands of Native River, who is top rated and does have a fair bit over these unofficial ratings, £3 higher than Black Lion, much higher than the rest for all that he is, giving them a bit of weight. I'd be interested in a bit of a puzzle. The Harry Fry yard were out of form up until late, but he's now back to form with a bit of a bang, so a bit of a puzzle would have to come into your thoughts for this race. I think she'd be the main danger to Native River, from being honest. But if this does turn into a slog, which for all intents and purposes, with the likes of Black Lion in there, this should turn into a bit of a stamina test, then Native River could be the one to benefit most from that. I do think Bit of a Puzzle jumps very well for all that she did fall last time out when taken over to Ireland, when looking to have that race safely in the bag, was still controlling things before turning for home. But it is a worry that she's coming into this race on the back of unseating Noel Feely on that occasion. He's back on board tomorrow. I do think that if she does jump around, she'll take a lot of beating, but she may just bump into one a little bit too good for the afternoon with Native River. So Native River for myself. Callum, you put Native River up as a horse to follow for the entire season. He's done you proud so far. Could it be another Grade 2 here?
Potentially. That Newbury race, when you look back at it, it really hasn't worked out whatsoever. Obviously, they pulled, even on Tom Patu, pulled clear, and he's been beaten in a handicap in the 150 since, and just doesn't really look a chaser. And Native River does look pretty slow. But then again, it might be the kind of horse that would be suited by tomorrow's test, because it should be pretty testing. I was gutted for Bit of a Puzzle's connections last time, because they ran a brilliant race for her in Ireland, and it was such a poor Grade 2, and she went off clear odds on, and she would have won well if she hadn't unseated. Black Lion, I don't know. I've just not been fully convinced by him as a chaser. I think he's probably getting better. His last run behind Sea at Midnight was a good effort. He should appreciate the step back up in trip, but I don't know. I think 9-4 on him's pretty short, considering I probably prefer Native River and definitely Red. No pun intended.
It wasn't even a pun. You just repeated the same word.
Pun. This is definitely spelt wrong. The thing that edged it probably just definitely Red for me is the fact that he's gets £7 from both of those two. Obviously the mare gets a bit of weight, but definitely Red. I thought ran really well behind Black Hercules last time, and I think that rate's pretty solid form, to be honest. And I think he's getting better for every run over fences. It was only his second run last time. I think he's open to more improvement than what potentially Black Lion certainly is, and Native River is over this sort of trip. I think Native River over 4 miles would be a proper beast. I think he's a proper test, but definitely Red, I think, might hold the edge tomorrow.
It is a very good renewal of the Cheltenham novices chase. It is, yeah. We've got a couple of good novice chases to go to war with tomorrow. Also, Grade 1 over in Ireland that we'll get to in a little while. We're off to Sandown though for our next contest, the 3 o'clock, which is the Betfred Heroes handicap hurdle over Grade 3 over 2 miles, 7 furlongs and 98 yards. 11 going to post. And again, Adam, it's a wide open handicap hurdle. Ibis de Reur at the head of the betting, but Baywing's been in fantastic form for the entirety of the season. Brian Harding back on board this time, and so still the handicap, it doesn't look to have got to grips with him.
Well, I saw him win off 89 at Carlisle. I was there that day. It was the first race of the day, and I stood with someone, and we both said, this is a type of horse. He looks very well handicapped. He's a type that could go on a real roll. And I didn't think I'd be sat here talking about him in a 3-mile handicap hurdle around Sandown off 135. And if he wins this tomorrow, I think he's already one of the success stories of the season, but it'll further increase his momentum, basically. I really like him tomorrow. I think he'll win. Considering how much he's still gone up in the weights, I still think he's potentially got more to come over hurdles, and he will be a very nice novice chaser next season. I think he's the one to beat. Ibis de Reur should improve for the step up in trip, and he shouldn't mind the ground tomorrow, but I just think that Baywing could prove to be better than him. In saying that, Ibis de Reur, I think, will reverse form with Jarl Enki, who I wasn't convinced about over 3 miles at Haydock, and he jumped. I know he won the Lanzarote, but his jumping wasn't particularly good on that occasion, and he's worse off at the weights with Ibis de Reur. If there's one at a bigger price I think can go well, Medinas is back, and man of the moment Alan King, who had 5 winners last weekend. William Featherstone claimed 7, and I think he'd be here fit. He wouldn't be here just to make up numbers, because I know he's had a setback. I think he did a tendon after his 4th in the long walk last year. If he's going to be off 1-4-3 tomorrow, and I think he could be chucked in off that. Baywing is your likely winner, but I would not be shocked if Medinas ran a really big race tomorrow.
I think I completely agree with your sentiments about Baywing. I think it was Tony Calvin on IUK earlier on. I think he's on at 42 or 46 pounds in the handicap, but it's worth taking into account that his opening mark of, was it 89, was just completely wrong. I mean, that was way too far below what he can actually, or he's actually capable of, and he's shown that in his 4 runs since. The one worry for me is that Ryan Day rode him last time out. That's £5 off the back there and then, off a mark of 125. He's gone up £10 for that, so 135, and Brian Harding takes over tomorrow, so he doesn't have the £5 claim on board. He's effectively £15 higher in a much tougher race. Saying that, he still travelled very well, jumped very well, and looked like a very well handicapped horse indeed. I think he's very much a worthy favourite at about 4-1 for the Nicky Richards team. I think he's going to take a lot of beating, mostly for the fact that I don't overly like horses in behind. Ibis de Reur, I thought his time to shine was going to be in the Lanzarote hurdle. I think stepping up to 3 miles will bring out the best in him, but again, it might be another one that needs a little bit of time before we do see the best of Ibis de Reur. And Jarl Enki, I'd be against him for the pure fact that he stole about 6 lengths at the start of the Lanzarote hurdle. He did win it very well. Charlie Deutsch was on board that day. Aidan Coleman takes over at this time. But again, Jarl Enki pretty much won the race at the start, stayed out in front, nothing got past him. Medinas, I get your point, Adam, about Medinas. I couldn't really take on trust he's going to be 100% fit, especially being such a small horse carrying that sort of weight, especially, well, yeah, you did take into account Will Featherstone's a £7 claim, but even still, if he's not 100% fit, then he's going to have a very tough time of things tomorrow, and he may be aimed back at the Cheltenham Festival once again, where he is, of course, already a winner in the past. Of the rest, there's not a great deal that enticed me lower down in the weight. Sadler's Encore ran well off the back of an absence last time out. He may be prone to the bounce factor. He hasn't got a great deal of weight in his back, though, for the Philip Hobbs and Richard Johnson team. He has to be respected, but I think he may have a few more better runs further down the line. I do think the one to beat, and the one that everything points to, is Baywing for Nicky Richards and Brian Harding. I know it's another favourite, but at 4-1, I wouldn't be complaining with a winner of that price. Callum, 2 votes for Baywing. Is it going to be 3?
I think he has obvious claims, doesn't he? He's won his last 4. He definitely shaped as if he had more to offer last time. He won with plenty in hand. I think your point is very valid about the fact he's gone up 10 and they haven't got a claimer on tomorrow, which is the same really for Jarl Enki as well, who's gone up 8 and doesn't have Charlie Deutsch on and has Aidan Coleman on instead tomorrow, and definitely had the run of the race, got an easy lead, got quite an easy start as well. I mean, he gained a few lengths right from the start, so I think Ivor Saru's got a good chance of overturning that form because he was left with quite a lot to do. I think that was a solid race, that Lanzarote. I mean, it probably wasn't, for the Lanzarote, it wasn't the best of races, but in the context of this race, it was pretty decent. But I'm actually going to go elsewhere. I did like the return of Sadler's Encore at Wincanton on Boxing Day. It was a bit of a muddling race. He was quite well placed, and he probably was fit enough on his return from, 20-odd months off. But I thought it was a really promising run. There is the potential for the bounce factor, but obviously, but I think he's worth chancing. The step back up to 3 miles, I think, will really suit. I think the emphasis on stamina will really help him. Dickie Johnson's back on tomorrow, and the Yard are in flying form. So I just prefer him over Baywing at the prices. I think they're the two to concentrate on. But I do quite like Sadler's Rock. I think he's been a little bit overlooked in the betting.
Another wide open handicap, as that race is every year, in fairness. Got some good racing from Sandown. One more to cover there, a handicap chase to round off the card. We're off to Ffos for one of their feature races of the year, and a race that came under a bit of scrutiny last year and the year before that, and probably the year before that as well, because usually run on horrible ground, as it will be tomorrow. The 3:15 at Ffos is the dry build construction West Wales National handicap chase over 3 miles, 1 furlong and 60 yards. They have, in total fairness to Ffos, shortened the trip ever so slightly because it's such a gruelling task, as we thought the last couple of years. But Bob Ford, Adam, did win this last year. He was running a big race in the Welsh National as well before coming down. Was it 3 out, 4 out?
Something like that. He fell 4 out the final ditch, and there was concern about him, but he got up fine and galloped away. This race last year, I'm a big fan of staying handicap chase, as you all know. But this is probably one of the worst races I've ever watched, and it was worse than Companero's Ida for me. It's something you don't want to see. It was really uncomfortable to view. Everything was pulled up by 3 out apart from him and poor old Gorgeously Edge, who stopped at the last, then walked over the last, and then there was a hoo-ha about whether Callum Williams had pulled him up or not, which was just... I'm glad that they've reduced the distance, but personally, I'd have just scrapped the race, personally. And another point as well, a national, I know in Ireland they have 3 mile nationals, but a national over 3 mile 1 just doesn't do it for me. It's just a normal handicap chase, so it's a poor race anyway. And I actually found it really hard to find selection because I had question marks about everything in the field. Rebecca Curtis's, all 4 of them, the Yard has been in really bad form of late. I know they've had 1 or 2 run well, like the Romford Pele, who I was actually quite surprised to see run well. We'll probably get a mention later on in the show. But of her 4, it would have to be Bob Ford because he's the only one here that really, really likes testing ground, and Ffos is a track that he's done well at, and just by a process of elimination, he would be the selection. Coggery hated the ground in the Welsh National. He's gone on Chepstow Heavy before, but that was a completely different kind of Chepstow Heavy, and he was struggling from a fair way out. Finish the story isn't good enough, and Ale Vic, it didn't get very far in the Welsh National, but I just don't think he'd be good enough to win this race. And the other 3 of Rebecca Curtis I just couldn't have in my mind. Bob Ford is very, very tentative selection. I hate the race.
I think I wouldn't have a bet in the race, but I think if the Rebecca Curtis yard were in better form, Bob Ford would very much be the one for me as well. I was watching the Welsh National with Callum, and the whole way round we were saying Bob Ford's jumping really well and travelling well. He's probably going to win this. Then he came down at the fourth last when still going okay, was just beginning to come under a bit of pressure.
Like he was starting to weaken, I thought.
Yeah, he'd have been beaten, but whether he'd have been beaten that far, I'm not sure. But for him to dominate a field like that, especially compared to the field of 7 that are going to post tomorrow, I think that speaks volumes about his ability. But again, he is a horse that does need everything to go right for him. He was a winner at 2 outings ago, but he does, as I say, need everything to go right for him. He probably needs to be left alone as well in front to be seen to best effect. But the yard are in pretty poor form. I think Bob Ford is my most likely idea of a winner, but as mentioned, Callum, the yard aren't in great form, and it's not really a race that I'd like to have a bet in that much.
Well, I think he's the worst handicap horse in the race as well, but it's one of those races where I don't think handicap marks come into any sort of consideration. Do you know what I mean, though? It's that sort of race. His course record is very good. The only 2 times he's tasted defeat here was when he pulled up in this race 2 years ago. I think he's a more... I know his record was completely suggests otherwise, but I think he's a more solid horse now. And it's either he wins or pulls up, but either way, I think it's easier to predict now. And by that, he got beat by Takan Desoy in a novice chase in 2013 over 2 miles. So he ran him to 2 lengths. So you must love the place. He's just a thorough boat who will go out in front and. Yeah, I think he'll be mighty tough to beat, so I'm just not convinced by the rest of them. I mean, Rebecca Cage is very keen on to win this race by the looks of it. But I mean, again, the yard aren't in great form, but I don't know. I can't say what I actually think about this race, but
you can.
Bob Ford, I think will win it again because. He's the only one that's going to...
Well, what do you think of the race, Callum?
To be honest, I'll put my serious hat on. I think it's an absolute joke that Ffos have meetings at this time of year.
Yeah. I agree, wholeheartedly. And
because it's not fair. It's not fair on these horses.
It's not. Callum sounds like an animal rights person, though. It's not fair on these poor horses.
It's not.
It is cruel.
No. Callum doesn't sound like an animal rights.
This race was the most disgraceful race I think I've ever seen. It was disgraceful.
Well, Callum, the thing about Callum and animal rights activists is that Callum actually has a point to argue, whereas animal rights activists don't.
Yeah, good point. I
think that
you all agree.
A little story as well. When I tweeted about this race last year, somebody tweeted me saying that the 2001 Grand National was uncomfortable to watch, and I thought about that, but. I thought the 2001 Grand National, admittedly run on really, really deep ground, it was comfortable to watch because a loose horse wiped out a quarter of the field.
Yeah.
The ground actually didn't look raceable. In fact, it probably shouldn't have raced, but it was safe. Horses actually didn't finish as if they were walking. They were actually, Red Marauder was able to raise a gallop at least. It's just that race was just, last year was just horrible to watch.
Last year's renewal and that Companero Ida, the two that always stick in my mind is just...
I probably have the Companero Ida a little bit higher than the West Wales National last year. I think the Companero Ida was probably worsened by it. I think they ran Companero about 2 weeks after the race.
Well, that's Connection's fault, that. They shouldn't have run.
Yeah, that was ridiculous, to be quite frank. I mean, the horse should have been banned from running for about 6 weeks. It took so much out of the poor thing. But
Giles Cross in the race as well, who basically clambered over the last.
It was.
That was
those 2 finished, but it was horrible. But nonetheless, we'll go on to another staying chase.
Hang on a minute. Before we continue, I had a little story I just remembered. When Callum mentioned Bob Ford being beaten by Takan Desoy, I remember a real judge who's a member of this panel saying they would not back Takan Desoy at any price to win at the Cheltenham Festival that season. And another person sat on this panel offered them to lay them a price, a really big price, but that person said no. Luke, was it you?
Yeah, the reason I turned down that bet is because I thought that he might be a handicap plot job.
And he went and won the jail thing. Again, I agree with you.
That 2.5 mile novice on the first day.
Yeah, literally. I turned it down. I turned down that bet because I thought he could be a handicap job. That.
I was like, give me 100 to 1. You're like, no.
I didn't even back him in a bloody race anyway, so all of
You're
us
like
were
wonderful
Handicap
charm.
logic. I think about 16 to 1 after winning the JLT for the Gold Cup. That was.
I didn't even fancy it that much for Cheltenham. It's just like it's just John Doe, isn't it? He knew it was going to be a different horse in the spring.
Right, Sandown for the 3:30. The final race we're going to be covering in England anyway. We've got the Irish action to have a quick look at after this. The Betfred Masters Handicap Chase, though, over 3 miles and 37 yards. 8 going to post is pretty much, Adam, a typical Sandown staying chase with the sort of horses that are turning up with 7th Sky, Union East, Black Thunder, Le Rev, so on and so on. It looks a wide open contest as well.
The word I used to describe this off there, and it's Callum's word, but I describe this as a trappy race. And I find it impossible to actually find something to side with. Normally, in these circumstances, you look at Lored and you'd side with him. He's got blinkers on first time tomorrow, and he was dropped £2 for, I thought it was a decent run last time out of Doncaster. And I was beaten 24 lengths, but the way he ran suggested to me there were other days in mind, and I think he is one for the Grand National. But I'm just concerned that he's out. If they win this, he'd go up too much so that he'd be handicapped out of things at Aintree. But at the same time, he's got such a good record around Sandown, and he's a course and distance winner. He's won twice over course and distance, so he'd be a solid option normally. But I'm just questioning whether the Grand National's the aim. Black Thunder, I think he's come down in the weights. I think he needs to come down a little bit more before he's winning a real decent prize of fences. He was going okay in the Welsh National. He's just been niggled along just to keep in touch, and then he unseated at the ditch going away from the stands. I think he's probably your main danger to Le Rev. I think Le Rev will win tomorrow, but it's just, I question in my mind whether he will be going for this or he'll be waiting late in the season. Of the rest, I can't have Union East on my mind. Why I even thought of him as a Cheltenham Gold Cup horse, Lord only knows. He's beginning to jump like his half-brother My Will did, who got progressively worse as he got older. His jumping in the Beach Chase was horrible, and it was even worse at Ascot last time. And apparently, considering he got a Grand National entry again, apparently hated the fences. So good luck with that project if they end up going down it. Venetia Williams has got 2 decent entries. Summary Justice, I said, jumps awfully, and then jumped really well last time out behind Carasestria, who didn't get a Grand National entry. Why, Neil? Why? And Sir Rock is here after his 4th in the Welsh National. The drop in triple helped him. I think I'm tentatively going to pull up Le Rev. I'm not having a bet in the race, but I just have slight question marks whether this is the aim or the Grand National is the aim, and I'm not sure.
You're quite good at picking out Gold Cup horses for long-term projects, aren't you?
Let's not talk about that. Oh, come on. That's not fair. Come on.
Both of them are great, and both of them are from Paul Nicholls.
Yeah. The second one I had more hope for as well.
Yeah. I think Sir Rock's the most likely bet in this race. He's off 10 stone 5, absolutely no weight in his back whatsoever. 131 isn't an unduly harsh handicap mark. I think he ran perfectly well in the Welsh National last time out, being just over 20 lengths. But again, in the ground and over the extreme trip that the Welsh Nationals run over, I thought acquitted himself fairly well on the afternoon. The drop-in trip, as Adam mentioned, will be probably slightly in his favour, and the yard just coming back to a little bit of form. They haven't really had the big winter that everyone expects and is used to them having, but they have had a few okay runners in the past few days, and the yard may just be coming back to somewhere near where Venetia Williams would want her runners. I think 11 to 2 could be a really good price about Sir Rock. Aidan Coleman has seemingly chosen Sir Rock, although Summary Justice, teaming up with Charlie Deutsch, did jump very well here last time. I was absolutely all over him at about 33 to 1, and then he got touched off by the other fancy in the race that I didn't have a bet on. But we won't talk about that. I think he's a horse that goes best fresh, Summary Justice. He was coming to the back of an absence that day. They have left him alone for a while again, so 63 days off the track. That could well play into Summary Justice's favour, because he will come here fresh enough. But I think this is a better race than he ran in last time. I think Sir Rock could well be the bet in it. The ones near the top of the weights I really couldn't touch at all. 7th Sky I always get wrong. I thought he was badly handicapped about this time last season, and he went and won about 3 more after that. Union East, again, I couldn't really have. Black Thunder, I've given him chance after chance after chance after chance, and he's just not rewarding anything that you put back into him. He's going to be well handicapped at one point. He probably is well handicapped now. but Black Thunder just isn't really rewarding anyone that backs him as of late. Lerev, same worries about that Adam mentioned, to be honest, a Sandown specialist, but if he wants to get into the national, well, a nice weight for national, I should say. And then tomorrow, he wouldn't want to be winning by far. We'll put that. But Ciroc, I do think Venetia Williams does hold the key to this race. I think Ciroc and Summary Justice are the two to beat. Slight preference, though, for Ciroc and Aidan Coleman. Callum, over to you.
Yeah, I think trappy is the right word. Don't think you can rule out any of them, really. Lerev, I'd been really keen on Lerev if it hadn't run last week, personally. I just think it's a fairly quick turnaround. He won the race last year. He's obviously had that wind operation. I think it will get right back to best at some point. The blinkers are on tomorrow. I think there's quite a few angles there. The Nichols pair, I could leave, personally. Union East looks badly out of form. Black Thunder, again, looked beat when unseating in the Welsh National. It was an okay return, but it was nothing special. Summary Justice, will he turn up? Will he not? He's a very in and out horse. And Ciroc, is he that well handicapped? I wasn't so sure. I thought he went up £8 for a win at Exeter, which hasn't really worked out. And since then has been beaten 2 better races. He's weaker, but I think he's fairly summed up by his mark. I'm quite interested in Pete the Feet here, who is a 12-year-old now, but he's definitely well handicapped. And the Longston Yard have had a few winners recently after a real barren spell. They had a couple of winners, say in the last week. Kulog ran a cracker last week in the last Saturday in the Sky Bet as well. I thought it was a really good run at Fontwell 2 starts back. Thought he was up with a strong pace last time in the North Yorkshire National, was it? Yeah, he was up with a pretty thorough gallop and just didn't quite get home. I've gone for a lot of Richard Johnson rides tomorrow. He takes over from Tom Humphreys, which I think is a good angle. So yeah, I think he's definitely of real interest here. I think he's the best handicap horse in the field on previous form, and if he can get back to his best, then I think he can take advantage of it.
An intriguing way to end the card at Sandown and for the English racing alike. There is one more race on Channel 4, depending on where you look. It is advertised some places, or most places it isn't, especially on the Racing Post website. But Channel 4 will be showing the 340 at Leopardstown. That's the Irish Gold Cup, the main race of the day, a Grade 1 over 3 miles and 60 yards. Callum, I'm going to start with you for this one, because the horse that is ahead of the market and was favourite before Don Poli came out is still Road to Riches, about 10 to 11, so bordering on even money for Road to Riches, but third in the Gold Cup last year. This is your overall Cheltenham Gold Cup fancy.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know it was on Channel 4, so I haven't looked at it. But obviously I know the horses.
I think you can bluff your way through this one.
Yeah. I knew the field anyway. Yeah, I'm hoping Road to Riches wins. Again, I think Gigginsdown are quite keen to win the race, and Rebecca Curtis is quite keen to win the West Wales National. And Gigginsdown are quite keen to win this one. I think they've got 5 in it. There's a lot of purple and white in this race. Yeah, I hope Road to Riches wins. He hasn't really had that much of a setback since November. I've heard it was just a couple of wrong blood tests pretty much before he was due to run over Christmas. So it shouldn't be a big issue. I think he might need it. His class should get him home. And then it's all step forward to the Ryanair, really.
If he ran the Ryanair, I'd be spitting.
I think it's going to happen, mate. To be honest, and if Road to Riches doesn't, then hopefully Van Balsalida will instead. But it's such a poor race at the moment that I think they'll be tempted, and I think he'd win it. I really do think he'd win it.
I've still never forgiven Gigginsdown for sending First Lieutenant to the Ryanair instead of going for the Gold Cup. Never.
Well, I think this is my moment, to be honest.
This is your moment to have it happen to you as well. I do think Road to Riches will take a lot of beating tomorrow. I was surprised he won so impressively last time out, over 2.5 miles, his first start on the season as well. He has had a bit of a break, as Callum mentioned. A few irregular blood tests did come back, so he has been off the track for 86 days, but he is the best horse in this race. The ground will be no problem whatsoever. The triple will probably bring out the best in him. It should do anyway. For each way purposes, I'm a big fan of Gil Gamboa. Quite selfishly, though, I'm hoping that tomorrow he just about doesn't get 3 miles, so they do go for the Ryanair with Gil Gamboa, because I think he'd be absolutely ideal for that race. He's run well at the Cheltenham Festival in the past before, and it's a Grade 1 winner. It's interesting they put cheek pieces on him for the first time, but over Christmas in the Paddy Power Chase did carry a massive weight in a very, very tricky handicap and just didn't quite see out 3 miles. So I'm hoping that more of the same comes tomorrow with him for Ender Bolger and Barry Geraghty. But Adam, it would be a massive shock, really, if there's anything other than Road to Riches victory.
Yeah, it would. The thing about Road to Riches as well, I'd be mortified if he ran in the Rhino as well. What Brian Cooper was saying earlier, he's still got a choice to make over what he rides in the Gold Cup, and if Road to Riches goes and wins this really well tomorrow, that's a third horse for him to consider. And Cooper could easily choose him over the 2 Dons. At this moment in time, if I was Brian Cooper, well, if I wasn't Brian Cooper, but I think he will pick Don Polia for the 3. It's between him and Road to Riches, I just don't think him and Don Cossack particularly gel well together, so I don't think he'd choose him. I think he wins tomorrow, Road to Riches. Of the rest, it's interesting that the next 8 in the betting, all of Grand National entries, they're all rated in either the mid-150s or 160. Would any of these run in the Grand National? Probably not. Maybe Wounded Warrior, and he's interesting tomorrow, having had 2 starts over inadequate trips. I think the step back up to 3 miles will really help him. If there's an each way play in the race, it'd probably be him. Is there anything else? Fox Rock should run well as well. I always saves his best for Leopardstown as well. But that form from the Lexus at Christmas, I think, is not worth very much. And arguably, I will say that I thought First Lieutenant arguably could have won the race if Davy Russell had actually got behind the saddle and given him a few smacks rather than tapping him down the neck sympathetically. Road to Riches wins. I think Wounded Warrior is a good each-way price.
Just going to quickly touch on the other Grade 1s over at Leopardstown. We are going to do it very quickly and try and race through them, though. The Juvenile Hurdle up first. Ivanovic Gorbachev is your short price favourite. It is also a short price favourite for the Triumph Hurdle at Cheltenham in March. Let's Dance was behind him last time out, so he's your second favourite, along with Jers Girl, who's about 10 to 1, along with Footpad at 14 to 1. Bigger at the remainder. It would be a surprise for all the money that's come for Ivanovic Gorbachev in the Triumph Hurdle if he wasn't winning tomorrow.
Yeah. It would be a surprise.
11 to 10 by the end of the day, and he's going to be pretty much for the Triumph.
Yeah.
This one.
He's short.
Honestly, if he wins well tomorrow, he's going to be near odds on. Surely.
Yeah. No, it would be absolutely.
But then again, all he's doing is beating the horse he beat last time.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's Jers Girl, 20 to 1 for the Triumph?
Yeah, something like that. She's a fair choice.
You like that horse, don't you?
I'm a big. To be honest, I think Jers Girl's a really, really good each way bet tomorrow. She's going to make the pace. I think she should have won last time out. I don't think Robbie Power had his finest hour at the final hurdle when he sacrificed all momentum that she had, left nothing going forward for the run-in. I think she should have won that race by about 3 lengths, to be quite honest, but she ended up losing it somehow in the end. I do think she's a very, very nice horse. Whether she's good enough to beat Ivanovic Gorbachev, though, that remains to be seen. But 10 to 1 each way, first 3 places, I wouldn't be complaining about that.
In her defence, Jers Girl, she did knuckle down and battle after the last when Apples J came to her. I think she rates as a fair each way bet in the race. The other one I think has been forgotten about is Rasham. Before Christmas, he was the hype horse for the Triumph Hurdle for Mikey Fogarty and Colin Kidd. And if you can forgive one run, it's going to be better ground. It won't be as bad as it was at Christmas, and surely 25s is too big as well. I wouldn't begrudge Ivanovic Gorbachev winning. I mean, Joseph O'Brien's doing the work now, and it would be some story if he gets the training licence just before Cheltenham, and his first runner happens to be in the Triumph Hurdle, and he goes and wins as his first runner. So I wouldn't begrudge it. The interview earlier, it just highlights how much of a nice person he is, the time he gives, and the way he's interviewed, very polite. I hate the amount of rubbish he gets, because when you're in a family like that, riding on the flat for Aidan O'Brien, Coolmore, etc., and you're in a high-profile job, I kind of think some of the comments he gets are really unjust, because he's riding the best horses. He's still got to be a very good jockey, and I think he'll make a really good trainer. So I'm hoping, as much as I'd rather like Fixlay Cap to win the Triumph Hurdle, if Ivanovic Gorbachev ends up being Joseph O'Brien's first runner, I wouldn't begrudge him winning it.
Callum, anything to add to that?
I think it's a good race. I think there's been a few races this year recently, leading up to Cheltenham, which are, they're not afraid to take these horses connections aren't afraid to take each other on with their good horses, which I commend really. I think it's a really interesting race. Having a bet in it, I do think this Ivanovic Gorbatov could be high class over hurdles, so I thought it could be very good on the flat. So we'll see.
Yeah, Jez Gold be the equally bet
One
of the
more
day
thing
for
on
me.
Ivanovic Gorbatov. Are we surprised that he didn't get a Supreme novice entry? Because I know JP McManus likes to have a runner in the race. He's done it before with juveniles like Binocular. I thought he may have got an entry there.
Yeah.
Lack of experience.
I don't know.
Yeah, true.
He'd go there with 2 runs basically. I mean, not as much or not as little as Moon Racer, but that race
oh my
too
god!
BC.
What a horrible decision that is to go there first time out. Just because a horse jumps well at home
goes on to win the Supreme Novices.
Oh, I don't care. Honestly, I don't like this idea of a horse going to the Cheltenham Festival first time out over hurdle. I just think it's wrong.
Well,
I don't care how well they jump at home. It's how they jump in a race that I'm more
concerned. This is the fight thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a really good idea, because what's the point in winning some poxy novices hurdle now and losing your novice status when you could lose in the Supreme and whatever, come back next year and you're still a novice?
But you could be second in the Supreme, beating half a length, come back next year and win it.
Yeah,
true.
I think genius.
And still have a full novice campaign.
Yeah, exactly. And they did the same with Chevry Chambertin over fences, and it didn't work with them at all. But I think it's genius. I think it's a really good idea.
I just think about it for the horse's development, really. That's my concern as well, because if he goes into a Supreme, they're going to go a hell of a leather gallop from the start. If he goes into that first hurdle unsighted and gives it a fair whack, I'd be really concerned for him. Don't like the idea.
Or along and see what happens.
Obviously, we're all entitled to our own opinions about the issue, but don't mention it on Twitter. God, no.
I'm sure they'll school him before.
Apparently, he jumps really well at home.
Yeah, what does he jump? The 155 at Leopardstown is the Deloitte Novice Hurdle with Grade 1 over 2 miles and 2 furlongs. This has been a very good sighter over the past 3 years towards the Supreme Novices, with the likes of Champagne Fever and Vitor, won last year by Nichols Canyon, who is a Grade 1 winner, a graded winner this year, and also Grade 1 winner after that. It's a tricky race this year. Graham Wiley won the race last year with Nichols Canyon. He's got Bells Hill at this time around, and it looks to be a straight match between himself and Tombstone, Adam.
Yeah, it does. And at the prices, I prefer Tombstone, who arguably I thought should have... I don't think he'd have beaten Long Dog at Christmas, but he could have been closer. Brian Cooper lost out in the barging match on the home turn, in what I think is a decent Grade 1 for Christmas standards. Because that Grade 1 at Christmas can throw up some really average horses, but I thought it was a good renewal of that race this year, and I think Long Dog will probably go into the festival as an underrated each way play in something like the Neptune. Tombstone, I think the target is the Supreme, and the hood is on, which I think will help him settle tomorrow. And I think he can beat Bells Hill, who I wasn't impressed by in Ace. And I know he won comfortably, but his jumping was suspect. And I don't rate the field he beat either. He'll need to improve a lot. And as Ruby Walsh has rightly said, he obviously rode Shantou Village at the weekend. He's going to need to improve a hell of a lot to beat Yanworth at the festival, as his target has been confirmed to be the Neptune. Petit Mouchoir is interesting, but I don't think 2 mile 2 is what he wants at this stage. I think he wants a flat out 2 miles just to help him settle. He can be very keen in his races, and of the rest, I'm glad that Bleu Rouge has been back, because Coney Island at 8-1 and him at 14 was a crazy price factor earlier. Coney Island, I think, is a bit of a thinker and won a poor race at Christmas. Bleu Rouge actually ran really well at Christmas in the race behind Long Dog. So yeah, Tombstone I think will win tomorrow.
I'd be with Tombstone at the prices, to be honest, as well. Bells has been a bit of a hype horse this year, and I haven't really been that impressed with him, to be honest. I know they said that they really taken by his hurdling ability on debut, and I don't think he jumped that well, to be quite frank. I don't think he jumped well last time out either, beating a pretty poor field. He beat a rank outsider at 66-1 by I think it was 5 lengths in the end. Everything else in the race really underperformed in a big way. 5-4 about Bellshill, I think, is a pretty poor price, to be quite honest. And Tombstone, who has got some good form last time out, finishing second to Long Dog, who's a horse I rate quite highly, stepping up in trip, and didn't get a clear passage. I think 2-1 about Tombstone could be real value in this race. It does look a match between those two, but 2 votes for Tombstone for the Deloitte. Callum, Bellshill, Tombstone.
I actually disagree. I mean, I haven't been that impressed by Bellshill in terms of jumping wise in particular. I think it's a bit hard to say he's been hyped up. I mean, he is a horse that had some very strong bumper form.
It's more what the likes of Paddy Mullins has said on like the Final Furlong podcast. I know he's under pressure. He's having a bit of a joke on that, but to say the likes of he wins everything and that's the one we're looking forward to most, I don't think he's that good. I don't think he's off the level that he's been posted on.
Okay, well, I really think he'll come into his own when he's on better ground in the spring. And the Mullins horses have just stepped up a notch over the last month, and I think he'll be another who will do it tomorrow. Personally, I've always liked the horse since his bumper days. I haven't been that taken by him over hurdles, but I still think he's by far and away Yanmouth's biggest challenger in the Neptune, and I think he'll approve it tomorrow. Tombstone, I think the hood will definitely. I mean, he was pretty keen last time. I don't actually really rate Long Dog, and I know you do. I think Bellshill's a lot better than Long Dog personally, and I think Bellshill will win easily tomorrow.
Yeah, I think Bellshill is better than Long Dog, not by much, but I think Long Dog will come into his own when running over.
Long Dog. I don't rate Long Dog at all.
The thing about Long Dog, he's been running over the wrong trips. Ruby got off of them last time when beating Tombstone and said he was flat out the whole way. Now, Tombstone did get a trouble passage on that occasion. I think he would have beaten Long Dog as well with a better trip. I think the extra 2 furlongs will help Tombstone out. I think there's a lot of positives in Tombstone's camp, especially with the hood on for the first time. And Brian Cooper gave a bit of a good nod to him working at home in the hood. At 2-1, I'd just much rather back him than Bellshill at 5-4. I haven't really been taken with Bellshill this year at all.
11-8.
Yeah. I think I like one more thing about Long Dog. I didn't rate him either until Christmas. That's the first performance that made me sit up and think, actually, he's not this horse. He's not a summer horse, basically. Like him and Batchus on early in the summer, and you looked at those and you thought, talking about them, it's Cheltenham horses. Are you kidding? And then it turns out that Long Dog, yeah, he could go to Cheltenham with a decent chance. Yeah, he keeps surprising. And I particularly like his sire as well, not Mercato as a junk sire.
Yeah. One final race to talk about, that is the Flogan Novices Chase, Grade 1, over 2 miles, 5 furlongs and 60 yards. This is a bit of an underwhelming race for me, if I'm being quite honest. Outlander's your favourite at 5-2, Pont Alexandra is weak in the market out to 11-4, Zabana next, then comes Monksland, Blair Perrone and also McKinley. I don't think any of those, maybe with the exception of Zabana, could go to the Cheltenham Festival with a big chance.
I'd agree with you in that sense. Pont Alexander's a weird horse now. I just think he's a high... Trying to say this in a nice way, I think he's a high-class plodder. I think if they send him to Cheltenham for a race, an end-to-end gallop won't suit him. I think he needs to go slow and steady, and then he can outclass them in that sense. And I just don't see him as a Cheltenham Festival proposition anymore. At least he's actually had a season this year, and he's had 2 runs, and he's having his 3rd run tomorrow. But I just don't fancy him for a Cheltenham Festival. Outlander's been impressive on his 2 starts today over fences, but I could just take him on. And I think Zabana, he won well at Christmas, and you can question the horse to be. I know Blair Perrone's in again, but Blair Perrone wasn't exactly putting in 100% effort on that occasion. His mark of 145 probably flatters him as well, and he also beat Tellers Moore, who is just one of the biggest dogs going, and one of the weakest beginners chase going, because the main market rival of his had a very interesting pot around for a handicap mark. I think Zabana's got more to come. Even though he raced on the flat, he's still got scope to jump fences, and I thought he jumped really well last time out. And if there is a horse in this race that has got, as you said, Cheltenham Festival potential, it's Zabana. And obviously the price has completely gone, thanks to the Final Furlong podcast last week, with all of them putting him up as a bet at 20-1. He's now 10-1. So, yeah, I think Zabana wins tomorrow, though.
Personally, I haven't got a strong view on the race. I do think Zabana is the one to beat. I think it's a baffling move to have Pont Alexander down to this trip. I think he needs much further, about 5 miles, to be quite frank. Outlander, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I do think Zabana has got the most room for improvement. He could be one that we see to good effect at Cheltenham come March. Zabana will be my idea of the winner for tomorrow. Callum, any view on the race?
Not really. No, I hadn't actually looked into it until about 5 minutes ago. So I've never really rated Pont Alexander. It's just not a horse I've liked before. So I hope that wins and he can lay the hell out of it at Cheltenham.
Which race would you lay the hell out of him for?
All of it, because even now I say then he'll lose and then the JLT won't run, so you've won already.
There you go.
Exactly, already ahead. Right, question time. For this week. Still time to get your questions and fantasies in. At OnTheOtherHoof is our Twitter tag. The first question comes from KJ II. He says, was Native River better than his Feltham result suggested? Probably.
Yes.
I just don't think that the track suited him at all.
No, it didn't.
Well, then he's better than result then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I thought he did really well to finish the close.
I said yes, you bloody oaf.
He did.
Oh, I just don't think... Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. He did well to finish where he did, basically, because he was losing ground at each fence because the track didn't suit him. So, yeah, he is better than that.
What went wrong with Cobbury last time? Wasn't it the Welsh
The
National?
ground. Yeah, the ground was the issue. Whilst I remember, before you continue with the questions, our number one fan, Glenn Ledgerwood, asked the question last week that you need to scroll down and look at. I just remembered. And it's a flat question as well, so Callum will enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. We'll do that in a second. And then KJ says, do the top two in the market take up too much of the betting in the spring juvenile? I think they do.
Yeah, they do. There's tremendous each way value wherever you look.
Yeah.
In that
and the trip for Bellshill is dropping back in a negative in the Deloitte.
No.
I don't think it is. I think, if anything, it should help him jump better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
And to be quite frank, I think he needs to tomorrow. That question from Glenn Ledgerwood says, from last week, another good show. Thank you, Glenn. Says, rather like the anti-post angle, do you think Buratino at 25 to 1 for the 2,000 guineas is too big? Callum?
He's got the potential maybe to place. It's a weird race, isn't it? Because you've just got that one horse that looks exceptional and probably wins, and the rest of them just look, I don't know, just nothing else really appeals. I think there's a lot of horses the Buratino, there's a lot of horses I prefer for Buratino over others because there's some I just can't have whatsoever. I bet on Massart and anti-post because I think that is a clear second best for me, and it should be clear second best in the betting. But Shalar, just looking now, Emotionless Shalar can touch. Neither could Foundation. Hit It a Bomb, Ultra, round 2. Yeah, I think Buratino's a fair shout when you consider all the horses around it. I couldn't have most of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I think it's a fair each way shout at 25 as well. Going up in trip, I still think it should be an issue for him. I think 25 is more unfair on a Coventry winner. I know he's trained by Mark Johnson and had a busy 2-year-old campaign, but he could go
At least
on.
he stays with him.
Yeah, that's another good positive as well. That's another point with Godolphin as well. They've kept some of their better 2-year-olds with Mark Johnson. Lumiere, another example as well for the 1,000 guineas. So I think that's a good thing, a positive to keep him with the trainer, because when they gave Mark Johnson this opportunity to train so many 2-year-olds, I think it was on the proviso that the majority of them would then be sent to other trainers. So I'm pleased to see the good ones are really staying with him. So.
You should comfortably stay him on pedigree, so yeah. We'll see.
Yes. Buratino for the 2,000 guineas a little bit later on in the year. We'll get a few important race meetings out of the way first.
Love that.
Yeah, regard.
Any flat questions, Glenn? You send them in.
He's got a good jumps question later on, but don't worry, back to form.
To be fair, that's actually a good question because it's made me think about the flat. I need to get started on my list of horses to follow, which should be interesting.
If there's anything like your jumps one, it's going to be a good laugh.
I've got some 3-year-old handicappers that are lowly rated like last year, and there isn't an Atalan. There is no Atalan in the list.
Kev the punter, it was good to meet you last week, Kev. Cheltenham, thank you
briefly.
for saying hi. Really good to meet you. Great bloke. Go give Kev the punter a follow on Twitter. Is Goodbye Dance for a good bet at 14 to 1 in the Welsh Champion Hurdle. Ran well to finish second at Haydock, after a bad error. And also says Rashan is slightly overpriced each way at 33 to 1 for the Spring Juvenile if all 8 run.
you buy Dancer the second behind Baywing, and if I think Baywing's going to win the race at Sandown, then yeah, he should be. But I'm just concerned about the dropping trip against horses like Silsal and Deputy Dan. That's my only concern for him. He's not a bad each way price.
It's going to be really testing. So it's basically going to be around like 3.5 miles. I don't know. But...
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah. KJ is there sending another question, and to be honest, out of all the grade ones at Leopardstown tomorrow, he's picked the worst one to call fascinating, saying, "How do you see a fascinating Flowguard novices chase going?" I mean, that's the least interesting one for me. It's the least interesting race to be honest out of all of them. I mean, it's an okay race,
if I'm gonna, it's not really an all-out opinion. I don't think any of those will win at the Cheltenham Festival in March.
No.
I'm just not kidding. Maybe Zabana would be the only one I think about for it, but the rest of them...
Zabana would be my only one I would think about in that, but I don't think it's that good a race, to be quite honest. Then Glenn Ledgerwood comes back in. Back to normality, Glenn, with his jumps question, saying, interesting one tomorrow. Who's that in the 125 Leopardstown at 14-1, and also Arkrish for the Martin Pipe at 16-1. I think Arkrish is an interesting one, but Jigginstown have had a fair amount of luck in the Martin Pipe over the years at the Cheltenham Festival. I think Sir Deschamps and Rada Frank also ran in the same race as Stonehard did.
No,
Sir Deschamps and Rada Frank both ran in the same race as a build-up to the Martin Pipe. It was earlier this week or last week, I think it was, that Stonehard ran in. So you'd think that Stonehard would be the number one of their battalion for the Martin Pipe, but Stonehard didn't run that well in it, and seemingly he's not straightforward now. So Arkrish could well be the one at 16-1. I do think they have better propositions for that race, though.
I'd agree with that, but if you look at his form, though, I mean, he was really disappointing in his maiden hurdle to start with, and then he even beat a horse that you'd like, Laid Back Luke, which describes you very perfectly.
Great horse.
Yeah, great horse, yeah. What about good old Lukey boy, who's now in Hong Kong? Yeah. I think you'd get an interesting handicap mark. I don't think you'd be... I think you'd get like a high 130s, low 140. You could be onto something there. But I think Giggy would probably have one or two better than him. Maybe
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that. Thank you for reiterating my point.
I agree with you. I'm just trying to give Glenn some hope, and then my opinion, obviously.
Yeah. Derek Gamblepun as a question I assume more towards Callum, saying, who impressed you more at Maidan, Urtejal or Frosted?
Ooh. Urtejal, I think. I was very impressed by both. I think Frosted definitely has a quirk or two, but I thought he did it really well. I think the form is quite easy to knock for the fact that Gold City finished second, whereas Urtejal just blitzed his field again, showed that he didn't have to have the run of the race, and just looks an absolutely exceptional animal over that 5 furlongs.
Why did they even contemplate running him in the 2,000 guineas? I don't know.
I know. When you look back,
such a beast.
When he won at Lingfield on, when was it? Was it the
Friday?
Yeah, it was all in the Championships Day.
Yeah, and he was so keen. And he was just desperate to go forward. I remember when he led the Bunbury Cup field for about all bar the final furlong, and I was I'm desperate to see that back over 6.
And then we got that wish. And then we got that wish finally in Maidan. Oh,
yeah.
Such a beast.
They've got it right now.
Won the Nats comp last year, so I'm forever indebted to Urtejal, and I think he could win the Alcohol Sprint as well. That's how good I think he is as a sprinter. Would he then come back?
Favourite, Adam.
Oh well, favourite back. Oh well. Would he come back over to Europe? Do you think then for some of our big sprints maybe, or do you think he'd be kept more out in Hong Kong?
Style.
Goodbye. Yeah, good point. Maybe. I think he could go well in the King's Stand and the Abbey. Jesus, imagine him in the Abbey. Breeders' Cup. Wow. Jesus, stop giving me these thoughts.
He can run a bend. We know he can run a bend.
No problem with that.
I might not be against it. We'll see. It'd be interesting.
Jamie Brownlow's tweeted in next saying, I hope John Joe and Neil Yard turn a corner. They have. They had a winner the other day. That's a step in the right direction anyway.
Back in forth.
Yeah. Saying, I hope to join the clan do well in the Sandown 3 o'clock with Jockey taking £7 off. I think that's Patrick Cowley taking £7 off each way for that. Best of luck with Join the Clan, Jamie. And then Glenn Ledger was back in saying, David Pipe, what a genius. Hashtag, this is a long hashtag as well. How to get a great price on the Cheltenham bumper winner for the Supreme.
To be fair, if you backed him at shorter odds, though, wouldn't you be slightly worried at him going to a Supreme first time out, though? I know he's gone well fresh in the past, but it just niggles away at me. I just don't like the idea, personally. I don't care how well he jumps at home with a lead horse or one alongside him. It's when he's in a Supreme with... I don't know how many runners there are going to be this year. I'll say 12 runners, say. And going in end-to-end gallop, it's just... I don't know. If he can win it, it'd be some performance. And then I will doff my hat to David Pipe and say I was wrong, but... Just don't see it.
Phil Dinsdale has disagreed with my view on Bellshill, saying, Luke, you're wrong about Bellshill. Look at the form of the horses that he's beaten and have franked the form. Okay, he's beaten the horses,
what form?
Well, everything that he's beaten that's meant to be good hasn't run their race on the day against Bellshill. That's my point.
The form of his race at Nice is awful.
His last race was garbage.
Awful.
Absolute garbage.
I know his bumper form is really good. He chased home the beast at his Bart's Hill. What a deceptively good horse he is, but his hurdles form, not really. I mean, Tycoon Prince was a hype horse to start with, and he's essentially a chaser, so you won't see the best until he goes over fences. And that race at Nice last time out is just a horrible race. If there's one that I'd want to take on, it's him. Admittedly, Spring Ground will improve him, but I'm just not sold on him now. I was at the end of last season, but the more I've seen of him over hurdles, the more I've disliked him.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big Bellshill fan, if I'm being quite honest. Phil then goes to say, only thing that gets Bellshill beaten tomorrow is the ground, and also Tombstone, I'd say. Hashtag Festival Banker. To be honest,
no.
the Neptune's looking more likely for Bellshill. If he turns up in the Neptune, I could not see in any way that he'd beat Yanworth.
You wouldn't lay a glove on him?
No, Yanworth looks different league, to be quite honest.
And interestingly as well, Yanworth was given one festival entry, and it was just the Neptune. They didn't even contemplate Supreme, which I think is a good move. So it means you know where he's going to run.
If Bellshill wins well tomorrow, then he's going to be a similar price.
You can just lay him then.
Hopefully Yanworth gets pushed
You just
out.
back Yanworth if you fancy.
Yeah, exactly. I'll do both.
Right, nap time, guys.
Ooh.
Adam, you go first.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to nap Maximizer. He's too big. Too big. He shouldn't be that big tomorrow.
You've got ground to make up.
Yeah, I've got plenty of ground to make up.
I am going to nap each way because I don't really fancy a great deal tomorrow. And I'm going to hope that the price remains. I'm going to go for Jers Girl each way in the juvenile hurdle. Currently about 10 to 1. I think if it's 10 to 1, then just fill your boots in the place markets. Whether she's good enough to beat Ivanovic Gorbachev, I don't know. I do rate her very highly, and she probably will get the run of the race out in front. I'm just hoping that she can take a step forward on what she showed last time, and she should be going pretty close. I think she should be a much shorter price than 10 to 1. Callum, your nap for tomorrow comes courtesy of Lingfield, I'm sure.
It does. I've had a decent bet on Cold as Ice in the 6 furlong race.
Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, thank you for getting me on at 3 to 1 because of my Betfair account is in some regards restricted because of my job. I've missed the early prices, but I think she's a proper sprinter, and I think she's better than this lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have backed her as well.
One more tweet before we finish. Jamie Brownell's tweeted in again saying, on the John Journey yard, that was just the win. I would like to see the yard win a few more races than one coming up to the festival. His horses, I mean, apart from Rose Revived at Ludlow the other day, they haven't been running badly, the ones we've seen this week. So I think the yard will... He's been waiting for decent ground, really, and I think they'll hit form. And there are a few in his yard that could be very interesting from the festival.
We have to mention as well, EI Bloodstock, or L Bloodstock.
Bloodstock, I forgot about that.
And their Maidan competition. The latest and up-to-date table. At the top of the table, we have Marquinhos, is what I'm going to call him. He's called Mark. But Marquinhos won.
But L Bloodstock, oh.
He's at the top. After Urtijol and Confrontation double this week. Well done to Marquinhos. Gillian is still second. Didn't have a winner this week.
Gillian, Jesus.
Forey's Walt's the last winner.
Oh.
Out of us lot, Mr. Maydan Callum Adele still doing best.
Well, I expect.
Yeah, Hannah pissed me off. That was a bad shout.
Very special this week.
And Very Special's price just disappeared.
Yeah. Out of the rest, it's Luke that's now well clear of Adam Webb 121 after Battersea won this week. Adam, though, you are still ahead of Hattie.
Good. What about KJ? Am I ahead of KJ still?
You had a double.
Yeah, KJ's still well down there, despite having a double of Urtejal and Battersea.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We also have one more tweet. This is the last thing, I promise. Jeff Hanley tweeted us in. He said he's back 2 so far for the Grand National. He's back Gallant Oscar, I know Callum likes. He's also back Larev as well. Both on Sandown tomorrow, obviously.
He's all about Vic's canvas as well.
Oh, Vic's canvas.
Good luck. Bet for Hurdle next week, isn't it?
Oh, yes. I can't wait for that card. Modus, I can't wait for. He's going to win the Betfred Hurdle.
Yeah, we'll get to that next week. Thank you guys for joining us once again. It's a long one this evening. We had about 10 or 11 races to cover, though, in our defence. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Callum, for joining us once again.
No worries.
Enjoy your day of racing tomorrow. 4 Grade 1s courtesy of Leopardstown. Also a Grade 1 at Sandown with your Silly Isles Novices Chase. The Towton Novices Chase at Weatherby as well. Some good racing to be had tomorrow afternoon. We'll be back next week to go on the Newbury card where the Betfair Hurdle is the feature. Join us then.